I don't know if you've heard, but many are already prophesying and predicting that next year the Madrid fault is going to go, that America is going to divide and split in two. That is due to a total solar eclipse happening on April 8th, the eve of Nisan 1. We're going to discuss that sign among some other precursors and signs that I see happening. You're going to want to stick around. Anybody who knows me knows that I take with a grain of salt solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, signs in the stars. I take all of that with a grain of salt because what is generally happening when people look at these things, they're attempting to formulate an understanding of what's happening right now in the world based on the patterns they see in the stars. They'll look at a story and they'll say, based on this story, we can predict the future, the present, and the past. Folks, by any definition, that is astrology. That's the definition of astrology. You can look it up. So I want to stay away from it. I don't touch astrology or things like that, attempting to predict the future based on a pattern in the stars or the moon or the sun. Someone gives me a blood moon. I don't want to touch it to try to predict the future or explain the present or the past. That's astrology. That's an abomination before God. So when I hear these things, I'll take it with a grain of salt. I say, yeah, okay, because I'll say something that you're already all aware of. How many times have we watched these blood moons and these eclipses come and go without incident? Oh yeah, there's people out there, they'll try to tell you that, this happened or that happened, and nothing significant ever happens. That's my take. That's the reason I stay away from it. So anybody who knows me, I generally stay away from it, except when there may be other things happening like I'm about to talk about. Next year is a total solar eclipse, and its trajectory is going to be crossing right over the Madrid and the Wabash seismic zone that I never even heard of until I started studying this. Now, that may not be significant, except if you go back 7 years or back to 2017, let's say. Actually, that was about 6 years ago. 2017, we had another total solar eclipse. It happened across the United States. I'll probably put some pictures up or some video for you to watch here just to make sure you know what I'm talking about. That was 2017. Came and went. And it crossed lots of different cities as it went across the United States. One of them, it went right over the Madrid and the Wabash seismic zone. Next year, April 8th, the eve of Nisan 1, anybody knows what I think about when it comes to Nisan and Tishri, my take on those months and that time frame, those seasons. I have kind of a different take on them, but they do have meaning. Nisan and Tishri are very important months when it comes to the Jewish calendar. So 2017, we had our one that crossed the United States, total solar eclipse. Another one next year, Nisan, or the eve of Nisan 1, the beginning of the Jewish calendar, the first month. It's going to cross, again, the point in which it crosses the previous total solar eclipse. This total solar eclipse is also going to cross that point, that pinpoint is, again, I'll put pictures up for you, is right at the Wabash and the Madrid fault line. Those two fault lines. That by itself, to me, means very little. I even had a video on it that I've just held. I've held it and held it. It's still on my computer. I made it. But I didn't want to talk about it. But there are things that have happened that I'm now taking. When you take, let's say, this coming total solar eclipse, you take the pattern that happens to cross right over the Madrid. If you have other things happening besides that, and there's a culmination of other things besides that, and that's where I think we're starting to get into an area that I want everybody to start praying about. I really want you to pray about this. I did a video earlier this year. It was a short video, and it happened to be, again, Nisan, happened in April, that the Mississippi River was flooding. Now, again, I'll probably put that video up. There's a little short video I wanted everybody to pray about is why is the Mississippi River flooding? I felt it was significant.
It is like the worst of winter in reverse as excessive snowmelt poses a rising disaster threat in parts of the country tonight. Along the Mississippi River, flood warnings up from St. Paul to north of St. Louis. In places like Davenport, an agonizing wait for residents, powerless to halt the creeping waters, still days before the river is expected to crest.
5 states, including Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, are seeing some of the worst river flooding in 2 decades. Meteorologist Nick Stewart from our CBS affiliate KGAN is following the rising waters from Guttenberg, Iowa.
This is the commute for some people living along the Mississippi River, where floodwaters now cover the roads.
You know, this is a little bit extreme. So I don't have any heat, I don't have any water. It's like camping in an expensive house.
On the islands dotting the river, many homes are now accessible only by boat. You can't tell, but this is Riverview Road. It has become part of the Mississippi River. It will be cresting soon, the highest crest in more than 2 decades. The Mississippi River is approaching, or is at major flood stage, all along Iowa's eastern border. Melting snow is feeding the river, with flood warnings from the border of Canada to Louisiana.
Put that on a shelf. Move forward to this month, or now last month, when you'll probably see this video. Tishri, what's happening again with the Mississippi? I had somebody, when I did the previous video, I'll put that one up here also for you. The previous video, I was discussing, so you got ocean water going in up the Mississippi into the rivers that go around the United States, right? Just look up your maps. The Mississippi doesn't just go up to the Great Lakes. Oh, no, it filters throughout the United States. In that video, I mentioned a portion of a prophecy to where the Madrid, or at least the Mississippi River would run backwards. Somebody sent me both an email and posted that apparently the Mississippi River is already starting to run backwards.
Police in St. Bernard Parish have a little more than a week before the saltwater wedge in the Mississippi River threatens their drinking water.
Neighbors and businesses are taking the threat seriously and getting ready. We found people buying bottled water as a precaution. The wedge is supposed to reach St. Bernard Parish the first week of October, threatening the drinking water supply. Doctors we spoke to say consuming too much salt water could be harmful for people.
Salt water leads to dehydration. So as we take in salt, it causes our cells to lose water in order to flush the salt out in our urine. And the net result is, if we drink a gallon of salt water, we would put out more than a gallon of liquid in order to get all that salt out of the body.
Salt water has been moving up the Mississippi for quite some time now. According to the Army Corps of Engineers, that salt water is just north of Point Lahash, and it is forecast to move up towards the St. Bernard Parish area within the next few weeks.
Am I saying this is the beginning of that the Mississippi is going to run backwards from now on? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not even saying this is that. I am saying, I want you to pray about this. I believe we're looking at a sign, a precursor, a warning to the Mississippi. I don't think this is that at all. I think we're beginning to see what will happen. I think God is attempting to warn people this is what's going to happen, and it is prophetic. It's also scientific if you really want to understand how this works. They have been doing news reports on it and how this works. The reason this is happening is because normally the Mississippi is stronger. It's so crazy how we've went from flooding, one extreme that hasn't been that way in decades. Now we're going down to drought conditions, folks. So much so that it's moving up, the seawater's moving up the river because normally the river's able to overpower the sea. In fact, I'll probably give you some news reports on how this actually works.
The reason why we're seeing this saltwater intrusion is because we have a lack of fresh water coming in from the north. The river levels here are so low, it is not pushing that salt water out or keeping it out. It is free to slowly meander up the river because, again, the river levels are so low. So we need water to come upstream and really rise our river levels to keep that salt water pushed out. So I want to show you the Mississippi at Belle Chase gauge here. You can see for the last year what we've observed in dark and what the average is. We've been pretty low for the entire summer, and that's really the story here, is how long we've been below average. We're typically low this time of year, but we've been low for so long it has allowed for that salt water to creep up even further than it normally does. So we need water to come from some of these other basins. You can see that the watershed, the Mississippi watershed, is a really vast system here. But a lot of these areas have been in a drought. In fact, an extreme drought for some parts, and it's all along a lot of these river basins.
Yeah, Leslie, you know, the river has been running low all summer long, and that's what's allowed this salt water to creep up. So usually you've got the river fighting with the Gulf of Mexico. The river usually wins because it has a good enough flow. It's pushing out the salt water. But when the river starts to drop, the flow of it starts to lessen. And whenever we get in our natural tide cycle, each time we're in high tide, that salt water is pushed further and further up the river because the flow is not as much.
Right now, okay, so let's say we got the mouth of the Mississippi about like this, right? When that fault line goes and the fissure opens up, what's going to happen to the water level? What's going to happen? It just does not take a rocket scientist, even though there's science on this. When that baby opens up, the water level is going to really go down, and it's going to go down. Now, where's the seawater going to go? It's got nothing to hold it back. Folks, it doesn't take prophecy to understand what is predicted, even scientifically, to happen in the future. It's happened before. Now, do you build your house upon the sand? Is my statement to some of you. I'm asking you to pray about this. Right? Just pray about it. If you know it's going to go one day, do you want to live there? Do you want to roll the dice? Now, I mentioned again in the previous video, I mentioned both John Kilpatrick, who I believe he had a prophetic dream. I mentioned Chris Reed's prophetic dream. In fact, I'll put a little bit up there again for you, that those of you who did not watch the last video, there's some specifics of what he said that I want you to pay attention to.
And another person walked up to me and handed me a headline which read, quote, "Israeli and Palestinian two-state solution reached," unquote. Another headline was handed to me by another person which read, quote, "Major earthquake hits the middle of the U.S., unquote.
See, I'm finding all of this kind of coincidental. You hear me? Coincidental. We have April, the Mississippi, Nissan, going up. We have Tishri, this last month, it going down. And a sign of what is to come. Or coincidental. And then you got 1 year later from the first precursor that I put the video up on YouTube, folks, of what I believe was happening with the Mississippi. I want you all to pray about it. 1 year later, coincidentally, 1 year later, again in April next year, we have a total solar eclipse going right over the Madrid and the Wabash zone. Probably coincidence. Or is it at that point it's done? We got Chris Reed, again, only recently having his prophetic dream of coming out and saying it, which I just showed you. It's kind of a culmination of things, folks, that I'm saying. It's not one thing, it's not two. We're starting to, all these different things are starting to happen. Listen to me. Here is something that I know is specific and will happen. There's a major takeaway from this, but Chris Reed said something.
And so we don't want to see, I think some of this could be conditional, but we don't have to do that and support the two-state solution. But I do think this will happen if we do. And so I pray for our leaders that we do not support this.
Things that are wrote in the Word You can't pray away unless it's said conditionally. You can't pray it away. I remember the first time God told me what Daniel 7 meant, the first beast. Folks, we will turn our backs on Israel. We're going to do it. I tell you that. You heard the correct interpretation here. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm telling you that's what it means. We will, and it's already wrote. Daniel already saw it. It's past tense again. We're going to do it. Jeremiah saw the same thing, 50 and 51, those chapters. God, Israel, Jerusalem, Zion, they're all angry at what Babylon will do, did do to Israel, to Jerusalem. They're all angry at us, and we are Babylon. I'm not going to get into that. These are things that you can't pray away. So I'm telling you, we will turn our backs on Israel. It's a done deal. There is no if, and, or buts about it. It's going to happen. So I want you all to pray about this. I want you all to understand what's coming. There is a takeaway, and here's the big part that I'm kind of building up towards. And there's a whole lot more I've got to say about this in the future. It's this administration that does it. I don't care if it's Biden. It's probably going to be Kamala. But I don't even care if it's even Kamala. Well, I'm saying a mouthful. Listen, folks, these are just faces sitting in the seat. They're just puppets. And you know this. This is not anything that you guys haven't heard. Any old face will do. In fact, I'll tell you this, no face will do. There's something that's a message that's coming soon. It doesn't even take anybody in there, folks. They're not the ones running the show. It's what's going on behind the scenes. I got to be careful with what I'm saying. Are you hearing what I'm telling you? I hope I get away with all of this. It doesn't take Biden necessarily. It doesn't take Kamala necessarily. It's what's happening behind the scenes. It's the people that are running the puppets that's going to cause this to happen. And anybody in their right mind, when we saw what we did to Afghanistan, and I was prophesying the details of Afghanistan over Israel, folks, long before I ever came onto YouTube, and I was saying specifics. And then we did it to Afghanistan. When Biden hit the administration, I'm going ding, ding, ding. It all makes sense. Don't look for Trump. There's some prophecies coming out already on that. It all clicked. And I'm saying expect that. And you know what? And then we did it to Afghanistan. And the details, folks, listen to me, because here's what you're going to hear. There's going to be lots of prophecies coming once we do this. And we have already done it as far as God is concerned. Once we do what we did to Afghanistan, to Israel, and specifically to Jerusalem, wow. I would, if we get to see that, if you get to see Iran being attacked, and then watch what Chris Reed said, he said, a two-state solution is going to be arrived at, and then the quake, right? I hope and pray that you actually get to see the details of this. But I want you to hear me, folks. I don't care what propaganda, what news stories are being said, what the administration is saying when it comes to this supposed two-state solution. Don't believe it. That it was a desire, that we were in lockstep with Israel. Take a moment for that. So somebody says, okay, the administration, we have a two-state solution. And this is the will of the people. The will of Israel? Really? And afterwards, God's going to judge us even still? Really? Yeah, this is what they wanted? Really? No. Don't let anybody tell you, folks, you got to be looking for certain signs that are going to happen so you can see whatever. I don't care what the news says. I don't care what media's, what propaganda, what they're pushing out there, and they're saying, well, it's been done, and this is what, it's great. Not in Israel's mind, not in the Jewish residents' mind, because here's what you're going to see. The exact same thing we saw in Afghanistan. I was saying those details long before Afghanistan ever happened. But I said it was going to happen in Israel. I said when Afghanistan happened, this was our dress rehearsal, and the details were this. Listen, we'll see it again. We will see it again in this administration because nobody is stupid enough. Nobody. The world mocked what we did. Nobody's going to do this again. Are you hearing? This is your takeaway, folks. How long do you think we have? How long do you think we have? Somebody wanted me to give dates and times and what year. I'm now going to be giving you events, and you're going to watch them as they happen. This administration, what did we do that we're going to do it again? Afghanistan, we turned our back on the Afghan army. What happened to them? They were being killed in the streets, folks. If they weren't running for their lives or being told to convert, they were being killed. There's a lot of horrible video on it. It's sick. So we turned our back on them. The army just basically, ran for their lives. The men, what was happening to the men? What was happening to the men, folks? What was happening to this is where it gets sick. What was happening to the women and the children? Did you follow the news? Did you hear the stuff? They weren't just taking them in as slaves. Well, they were their slaves. If they wanted the women and the children, they took them in, and from there on out, it gets sick. We took some refugees in. Left a lot behind, took some refugees in, left our military behind. Military equipment, billions, over 80 billion in equipment and cash, folks. We were funding, I'm getting dangerous again. We were funding their endeavors, their ideology. We were funding their war, and not just then, but for later, and for where this is headed. We have an agenda, believe it or not. As silly as some of the stuff we're doing, there is an agenda behind this. So what are we going to do to Jerusalem when you see, hopefully you get to see this before anything happens. I don't care what's been said on paper. It's already on paper. It just hasn't been enforced. We are going to turn our back on the Israeli army. We will. They're not going to, Jerusalem, the residents that they're not going to willingly get. Could you imagine somebody coming into your home, ransacking it? These are things I've said that's going to happen, folks. This is prophetic. They're going to go in and they're going to ransack people's homes. They're going to throw them out. This should tell you how this is a great two-state solution. Oh yeah. They're going to throw them out on the streets. Men are going to be killed. Israeli army fighting for their lives. The women and the children. It gets disgusting. We'll take some refugees in, probably. They're going to be out in the streets running to wherever they can find refuge. And other people will help because it's going to be insane. And we're going to tuck tail and leave, I had a word on this, we're going to tuck tail and run, leaving our embassy. I believe it's going to be like another Benghazi. Sorry, my nose is running. Okay, a word I had on the Jerusalem embassy that we're all so proud of. It's going to be laid waste, desolate, void of all U.S. personnel. When you see these things, listen, when you see these things happen, do not expect there to be an Antichrist. There's other false prophets that are going to come out and say, here comes the Antichrist. There's going to be a 7-year peace treaty. The Jewish temple is going to be rebuilt. It's likely going to happen in the fall. They're going to be looking for Tishri around that time, even because I believe it's going to happen before the fall. I believe you're going to see all of this before the elections and everything. You're going to see all of this with this administration. And it doesn't even take a face. I'm saying things on a future message that I've been holding. There are certain things I can't tell you yet. I had a visitation in February 30th or 28th. I say 30th. It's the 30th day of my fasting and abstinence, and I went through a lot. I'll give you a part of it. Listen to me. Something that I haven't said, because I don't even know why I even need to say it, but it was a takeaway from my visitation. We are going to be looking at, even during the time of the nominations of next year, Russia is still going to be at war with the Ukraine. It isn't going anywhere. I've known this all year. I've told certain people on the phone and in emails. So anybody wants to say you didn't know? I've known that. I had a powerful visitation of folks. There are things coming that I can't say yet, but listen to me. I keep telling you, and I want you to listen carefully. Those that have ears to hear, it doesn't take a face even to get what's happening behind the scenes in this administration to accomplish this backstabbing that we will do. We will do it. We've already done it. Martial law is on the horizon. I've said enough. I want you to prayerfully consider certain things. Listen to me. Those of you that are prophesying, saying on April 8th that the Madrid's going to go, I'd be shocked if it did. I'd be like, wow, that's crazy. I just think it's a done deal. It's a sign that it's over. Between now and then, I want you to look for these things. I would think even shortly after, if not before, you're going to be looking for the details of what's going to happen to Israel. Don't listen to the media and the propaganda. Don't be excited about it. It's not something that we did that benefited Israel. They are not going to want it. It's not a two-state solution in their mind, as much as it is to the rest of the world. Some powerful messages are coming. Look for more to come. Until next time, take care and God bless.